Her mother had arranged the date, selected the restaurant, and personally vetted the man, but forgot one detail that would unravel 30 years of carefully maintained control. She forgot that Cassie would say no, and that Wren would be the reason he stayed anyway. Marlene Ashford did not lose. Not contracts, not negotiations, not arguments with city councils in 3 states. In 28 years of running Ashford Development, Group out of a glass tower in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, she had turned a $200,000 loan and one stubborn vision into a firm with a portfolio that made competitors quiet when her name entered the room. She was not warm. She was precise, and the people who worked for her respected the difference. But Marlene had one blind spot so enormous, so long-standing that even she had stopped seeing it. Her daughter Cassie had been quietly breaking for 3 years, working double shifts as a physical therapist in Burnaby, raising a 7-year-old named Wren alone, sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, and telling her mother everything was fine in the particular tone people use when they've stopped, expecting to be believed. Marlene had noticed. Marlene had decided to fix it the way she fixed everything. She picked a man. She arranged a dinner. She told herself it was just an introduction. What she didn't account for, what Marlene Ashford, CEO of a $600 million development group, did not plan for, was that the man she'd chosen had already met Wren 3 months before the date, in a way that would change all of it. The file on Rowan Decker sat on Marlene's desk the same way every contractor file did, organized, annotated, reviewed, but Rowan Decker's file was thicker than most. 36, originally from Calgary, moved to Vancouver 9 years ago, owner-operator of a structural engineering firm called Decker Build that Marlene's company had subcontracted for the past 5 years. His work was flawless in a way that was almost aggressive. Deadlines met, budgets respected, 0 safety violations across 47 sites. He had never missed a call, never exaggerated a quote. In one meeting 6 months ago, he had told Marlene to her face that her architect's load-bearing calculations were wrong and that if she pushed the build schedule, she'd be looking at a partial collapse within 4 years. Her head architect had been sitting in the room. Marlene had stared at Rowan Decker for a long moment. Then she'd told her architect to redo the calculations. He was right. She didn't forget that. The dinner was at Harborview, a Vancouver restaurant that required reservations 2 weeks out. Cassie arrived on time because she was always on time, wearing a dark green dress she'd borrowed from a friend and heels she was already regretting. She did not want to be there. She had told her mother this 3 times by text and once directly over the phone. Marlene had responded with a restaurant confirmation and the words, "You'll thank me." Probably not soon, but eventually. Cassie sat down. She ordered sparkling water. She looked at the door. The man who walked in wasn't what she'd pictured. She had pictured someone corporate, pressed suit, easy confidence, the particular smoothness of someone who spent time performing competence. Instead, Rowan Decker looked like someone who had just come from somewhere real. Dark jacket, open collar, a jaw that needed attention. He moved without announcement, found her table by scanning the room once, and sat down with a directness that skipped the performance entirely. "You don't want to be here," he said. Not a greeting. A statement. Cassie looked at him. Was that supposed to be an icebreaker? No, it was just obvious. He picked up the menu. "Your mother arranged this. You look like someone who didn't choose it. I didn't choose it either, so we can pretend for 2 hours and then go home. Or we can skip pretending and see if there's a conversation worth having." She stared at him for a moment. "You spoke to my mother like that." "I told her one of her architects was wrong to her face in a room full of people. She hired me back the next week." Something shifted at the edge of Cassie's expression. Not a smile, but something. "What do you actually do?" she asked. He told her, simply, without inflation, structural engineering. His firm, 11 employees, sites across British Columbia and Alberta. He talked about the work the way she talked about her patients, with the focus of someone who genuinely cared about what happened when they walked away. She asked questions. He answered them without redirecting the conversation back to himself, which she noticed because it was rare. An hour and 40 minutes in, she had not checked her phone once. It was near the end of the main course when he said, without particular setup, "Wren drew something for me." Cassie's fork stopped. "How do you know my daughter's name?" He was calm. 3 months ago. Burnaby Community Center. Saturday morning art program. My niece Jade is 7. I take her when my sister's working. Wren was in the same group. He paused. We sat in the hallway for 45 minutes. She told me her elephant was named Boots and that her mom worked too hard and that Vancouver rain was boring. Cassie set her fork down fully. She drew a picture, he continued. A house with a very tall fence around it. She said it was her house and that the fence kept the sad out. He said it the same way he said everything, without drama, which somehow made it worse. I thought about that for a week. The table was very quiet. "You didn't mention this when you sat down," Cassie said. I didn't know how. It felt like something that needed a moment. He looked at her steadily. "I didn't know she was your daughter until your mother called me. I recognized the name." Cassie looked away. Out the window. The harbor lights were breaking across the water in long, unsteady lines. She was thinking about a 7-year-old who drew fences. They met 4 more times in the 6 weeks after. Once for coffee that lasted 3 hours. Once for a walk along the seawall that nobody planned to extend and extended anyway. Once when Cassie had Wren with her. Babysitter canceled, she'd warned him. He'd said it was fine with a flatness that made her believe it. Wren had assessed Rowan Decker from behind her mother's jacket with the solemn methodology of a small scientist conducting field work. He crouched down. No performance.
Eye level.
"Hi, Wren." She studied him. "Mom said you remembered me." "I did." "Why?" He considered this like it deserved consideration. "Because you said something I was still thinking about later. That's how you know something mattered." Wren looked at him for a long time. "Then Boots doesn't like strangers. That's fair. But you can see him." She pulled Boots out from under her arm with the gravity of someone extending an exceptional privilege. Rowan Decker examined the elephant with complete seriousness. "He looks reliable," he said. Wren nodded. "He is." That evening, walking back to the car, Wren looped one hand into Rowan's without looking up, as if it were simply the logical thing to do. Cassie watched this. She felt something open in her chest that she immediately tried to close. She wasn't ready for an open thing. Open things got damaged. It came apart on a Wednesday, not because of anything he did. That was the part Cassie understood. Somewhere below the defense she'd constructed, she'd had a meeting with Wren's school that afternoon. A conversation about Wren's drawings, which had apparently been concerning her teacher. A pattern had emerged over several months. Small figures, tall walls, people separated by distance. A recurring image of a house with one window and one figure standing outside looking in. The school counselor had asked carefully whether there were significant changes happening at home. Cassie had driven home gripping the wheel. She sat in the parking lot of her building for 20 minutes. Then she called Rowan. She didn't mean to say what she said. Or maybe she did. Maybe she'd been building toward it for 3 weeks without knowing. "I need to slow this down," she said. Silence. "Wren is already attached to you," she continued. "You've met her 4 times and she holds your hand. She told her teacher she had a new friend who listened to her. And I can't." Her voice was controlled but barely. "I can't let her build something with someone who might not stay. She's already drawing pictures about people leaving. I won't be the reason she has another one." The pause on his end was long. "Is this about Wren?" he said quietly. No accusation in it. "Yes." "Cassie, don't." He didn't push. That was the thing about Rowan Decker that she would not let herself acknowledge. In that moment, he didn't push. He said, "Okay, I hear you." And then, "I'm not going to argue with someone protecting their kid." They said goodbye. She sat in the parking lot until it was full dark. Inside, she found Wren already asleep. One arm around Boots, one hand stretched to the empty side of the bed as if holding space for something not yet there. Cassie stood in the doorway for a long time. The school had said it was a recurring image. A house with one window, one figure outside looking in. She wasn't certain anymore who the figure was. 4 weeks of silence. Cassie worked. She woke at 5:45, made Wren's lunch, dropped her at school, ran 6 patients through morning sessions, ate lunch at her desk, picked Wren up, made dinner, checked homework, collapsed, started over. The structure held. It always held. She was very good at structure. But Wren had stopped drawing boats. She'd told Cassie once 2 months ago that she wanted to go on a boat because she'd never been on one. That had been after a conversation with Rowan. Now, she drew the usual things again: horses, houses, islands, maps of places that didn't exist. She didn't mention his name. That silence from a 7-year-old was its own kind of statement. Meanwhile, Marlene called on a Thursday morning with the particular tone she used when she'd been waiting an appropriate amount of time and had decided the appropriate amount was over. "You ended it," she said. "Not a question. I don't want to discuss it. You're not discussing it with me. You're discussing it with your CEO mother, who has context you don't have. That sentence is why I don't call you enough." Cassie, a pause. Something in Marlene's voice that wasn't her usual register. Something that might, in a different person, be called vulnerable. "I need to tell you something about Rowan. That I should have told you before. The dinner. I didn't because I thought it would complicate things." "What?" Marlene was quiet for a moment. Which, from Marlene, was the loudest thing she could do. "Have lunch with me," she said. Friday. They met at a small place near Marlene's office tower. Marlene didn't open with small talk. "Decker Build," she said, "is not a mid-sized subcontracting firm. It's the parent company of 14 structural engineering subsidiaries across Canada and the Pacific Northwest. Combined revenue last year was approximately $380 million. Rowan Decker is worth, conservatively, between $60 and $80 million. Cassie looked at her mother. "He drives a company pickup truck that's 9 years old. He works sites. His crew calls him Row. He didn't tell you because he doesn't tell anyone unless there's a legal reason. 2. Marlene's voice was controlled, but her eyes were doing something different. "I've worked with a lot of powerful people, Cassie. I've been one for a long time. And I want you to understand what I'm about to say, because I don't say things like this." She stopped. "Rowan Decker sat in my boardroom 8 months ago and told me in front of my whole executive team that I was running too hard and missing what was right in front of me. He meant the project, but I thought about Wren for a week after that meeting." She met Cassie's eyes. "He reminded me of what I'd been missing for 3 years. And I didn't know how to say that to you, so I arranged a dinner instead, because that is apparently how I express emotion." The table was very quiet. "He's been wealthy for 6 years, Marlene continued. "He stayed on the sites because he said the work is what's real. He stayed quiet about the money because he said it changes how people see you before they see you." She paused. "He's not humble because he's modest, Cassie. He's humble because he decided a long time ago that the money wasn't the point." Cassie stared at her coffee. "A man worth $80 million who crouched down to a 7-year-old's eye level and asked about her elephant with full seriousness. Who said 'I hear you' when he could have said anything else? Who let her go without a word because she asked him to?" "He didn't tell me," she said. "No, because he wanted me to meet him first." Marlene looked at her daughter, and for a moment the composure softened at the edges. "Yes," she said. "That's exactly why." She called him that evening from the parking lot outside her building. The same spot she'd sat for 20 minutes weeks ago. Different air now. Or maybe she was different in it. He answered on the second ring. "I know about the company," she said. A pause. "Your mother?" She thought she was overdue. "She's not wrong." His voice was careful, not defensive. "I'm not calling about the money. Rowan." She stopped. Reset. "I'm calling because I told you this was about Wren, and it was. But it was also about me being terrified. And I used my daughter as the reason because it sounded more defensible than the truth." Silence. "The truth is I haven't trusted something good in a long time," she said. "And you were good, and that scared me more than anything difficult ever has. Because difficult I know how to survive. Good is harder. Good means you have something to lose." She heard him exhale. "I thought about calling you 12 times, he said. "Why didn't you?" "Because you asked me not to push. So I didn't push." A pause. "But I thought about the fence drawing every day." Cassie closed her eyes. The harbor was somewhere beyond the buildings, dark and wide and continuous. "She stopped drawing boats," she said quietly. "I know." And then, "Can I tell you something?" "Yes." "The reason I don't tell people about the money, the real reason, is because I Watched it make my father into someone I didn't recognize. He had nothing, then everything, and everything convinced him he'd earned the right to stop being careful with people. His voice was low and even. I decided a long time ago that the money would be a tool, not a personality, not a reason to stop crouching down. She said nothing for a moment. Then, she's going to ask where you've been. I know, and I don't know what I'll tell her. Tell her the truth, a pause. That her mom was figuring something out. Kids understand that better than we think. On a Saturday morning, cold and bright over Burrard Inlet, Wren stood at the rail of a small harbor boat with both hands gripping the metal and her face lifted into the wind. Boots was zipped into her jacket with just his trunk showing. She had insisted this was the safest arrangement for him. Rowan stood beside her. Cassie a step back, watching both of them. Is he okay? Rowan asked. Wren assessed Boots's situation with professional thoroughness. He's fine. He's looking. What's he thinking? She considered. The water moved beneath them, gray and light-scattered and enormous. He thinks it's bigger than he expected, she said. But good bigger, not scary bigger. Rowan glanced back at Cassie. She looked at him the way people look when they've stopped pretending they're not afraid and started deciding it doesn't matter. He looked back the same way. Marlene Ashford had arranged a blind date. She had controlled the restaurant. The timing, the introduction, and the framing. She had not controlled a single thing that followed. A 7-year-old with a stuffed elephant had done more than she had. Which was, if Marlene were honest, and she was becoming more honest, in small increments, exactly how it should have gone. Some things that matter refuse to be managed. They only move at the speed of trust. And trust, once it decides to go, moves faster than anyone expects. Watch the next story on your screen.